Most of us shop at the same supermarket week after week, without ever questioning whether it is actually serving us well. The habit forms early, the loyalty card goes in the wallet, and the weekly shop becomes automatic. The store feels familiar, the labels feel trustworthy, the prices feel fair. But there are meaningful differences between UK supermarkets in the areas that matter most to what you are actually eating. Ingredient standards, allergen labeling accuracy, food hygiene compliance, sodium levels in own-brand products, and the transparency of nutritional information on packaging. Some of those differences are significant enough to affect the health outcomes of people with existing conditions who are making food choices based on labels they have been given reason to trust. Today, I am going through 11 UK grocery retailers, being precise about what the documented evidence shows rather than what the marketing implies, and finishing with 2 that consistently perform better than the rest by measurable standards. Starting with Iceland. Iceland's business model is built around frozen convenience food at low prices. That model has genuine value for families managing tight budgets, and frozen food is not inherently unhealthy. The concern with Iceland is specifically about the nutritional profile of their own brand processed range and what it means for people eating these products regularly. Health campaign organizations, including Action on Salt, have consistently identified Iceland own-brand ready meals and frozen products among the higher sodium options available in British retail. The NHS recommends no more than 6 grams of salt per day. A single Iceland ready meal can deliver close to 3 grams in one serving. For someone eating 2 or 3 Iceland products in a day, which is entirely plausible given the format and price point, staying within the recommended daily limit becomes genuinely difficult. For most healthy adults, this is a dietary consideration rather than an acute concern. For people managing hypertension with medication, where sodium intake directly affects the efficacy of treatment, or for people managing heart failure or chronic kidney disease, where sodium restriction is clinically prescribed, the sodium levels in Iceland's core range are not just a nutritional footnote. They are a practical barrier to following medical advice. The core range also leans heavily on additives, including flavor enhancers, modified starches, and preservatives that extend shelf life and compensate for the relatively low quality of primary ingredients. This is standard practice in budget frozen food manufacturing, but it is worth naming clearly in a store that positions itself as a family food solution. Then there is Heron Foods. Heron Foods is primarily a Northern England discount retailer, less familiar to shoppers in other parts of the country, but a significant part of the grocery landscape for communities in Yorkshire and the Humber. The business model involves stocking short-dated, clearance, and surplus products from other retailers and manufacturers at heavily discounted prices. Local authority food hygiene inspections have found compliance issues at multiple Heron Foods locations. Some branches have received food hygiene ratings of 1 or 2 out of 5, which inspectors define as meaning major improvement is necessary. These ratings cover food storage temperatures, hygiene management systems, and structural conditions, not just surface cleanliness. A low food hygiene rating in a store selling short-dated products is a meaningful combination of risks. Products already near the end of their shelf life that have also been stored at inconsistent temperatures present a higher risk of bacterial contamination than fresh products in a well-managed cold chain. For elderly shoppers, for immunocompromised individuals, and for people whose immune function has been reduced by medication, foodborne illness from improperly stored products is a more serious risk than it is for younger, healthy adults. The range itself presents a secondary concern. Heron Foods stocks very limited fresh produce and whole foods. For communities where Heron is the most accessible and affordable grocery option, the product mix makes it genuinely difficult to build the diet that most health guidance recommends. At number 9, Farmfoods. Farmfoods is a frozen food specialist operating primarily in Scotland and Northern England. Like Iceland, the business is built around frozen processed food at budget prices, and the nutritional concerns are similar. The practical issue with Farmfoods is the product mix. Saturated fat, added sugar, and sodium levels across their core own-brand frozen range are consistently high relative to NHS dietary guidelines. Building a balanced diet around a farm foods shop is genuinely difficult, not because individual products are uniquely dangerous, but because the range as a whole does not provide the fresh and minimally processed options that a nutritionally balanced diet requires. This matters most for the communities that farm foods serves. In areas where farm foods is one of a limited number of accessible grocery options, the absence of affordable fresh produce and whole grains in the product mix is a real dietary constraint, not a theoretical one. For people managing type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular risk, or weight-related health conditions in these communities, the store layout and product range make it harder to follow the dietary advice their GP has given them. Moving on to the co-op. The co-op's brand positioning centers on ethical values, community benefit, and fair trade sourcing. These credentials are genuine in several areas of their business, and the cooperative ownership model creates different incentive structures from corporate competitors. The concern here is specific and operational rather than about the brand's overall values. Co-op stores are typically smaller format than the major multiples. Smaller stores carry higher operating costs per square meter, which is one reason co-op prices on own brand products are often higher than equivalent products at Tesco or Asda. Those higher prices create a specific consumer expectation that paying more at the co-op is buying something better. Independent nutritional testing of co-op own brand ready meals and convenience products has found sodium and saturated fat levels that are not meaningfully lower than equivalent products at cheaper competitors. The premium you pay at the co-op is largely absorbed by higher operating costs, rather than translated into better ingredient quality or lower additive loads. For people on tight fixed incomes who choose the co-op partly because of its ethical positioning, and partly because it is their most accessible local store, paying more for products that are nutritionally comparable to cheaper alternatives elsewhere represents a real cost with a limited corresponding benefit. Then there is Asda. Action on Sugar has consistently identified Asda own brand products among the higher performers for added sugar in several categories, including cereals, condiments, and ready meals. Added sugar in savory products is a particular concern because it is genuinely difficult to detect by taste, and front-of-pack labeling does not always make it visually prominent. The store environment concern is also worth naming. Retail layout is a significant determinant of purchase behavior, and Asda's promotional mechanics, including multi-B offers, Iceland displays, and eye-level positioning, are heavily weighted towards high-margin processed products rather than fresh and minimally processed alternatives. This is not unique to Asda. It is standard retail practice across the industry, but Asda's implementation is among the more aggressive in terms of promotional volume and placement. For someone making deliberate efforts to reduce sugar intake following a prediabetes diagnosis, or managing weight under GP guidance, the store environment works against those efforts in specific ways. The promotional infrastructure is designed to convert planned healthy purchases into additional processed product purchases. Understanding that design is useful for navigating it, but it requires active resistance to something that has been carefully engineered. At number 6, Morrisons. Morrisons differentiates itself through Market Street, the in-store butchery, bakery, and fishmonger counters that project an image of traditional fresh food retailing. That image is a genuine part of the business, and not without substance. The concern with Morrisons sits primarily in their recall and labeling history. The Food Standards Agency maintains a public database of product recalls, and Morrisons' own brand products have appeared in that database multiple times in recent years for undeclared allergens and mislabeling. An FSA recall for undeclared allergens means a product reached retail shelves with a label that did not accurately represent the ingredients it contained. For the vast majority of shoppers, an allergen mislabeling is an inconvenience at worst. For someone with a severe allergy to milk, eggs, mustard, or nuts, a mislabeled product is a genuine medical risk. For people on warfarin, where consistent vitamin K intake is clinically required to maintain stable anticoagulation, A mislabeled ingredient that inadvertently affects vitamin K levels can interfere with medication dosage calibration. For people with kidney disease managing potassium intake, an undeclared ingredient containing potassium is not a minor labeling error. The Market Street counters represent Morrisons at its best. The recall history represents a quality control process that has not consistently matched the standard the brand positions itself at. Then there is Sainsbury's. Sainsbury's live well branding creates a health halo across a significant portion of their own brand range. The color-coded traffic light labeling system, the wellness-oriented product names, and the overall positioning of the store as a health-conscious choice all generate consumer expectations about the nutritional quality of products carrying that branding. The concern is the gap between the health impression the branding creates and the actual nutritional profile of some products beneath it. Several Sainsbury's own brand products marketed under Live Well or similar health-oriented branding have been found in independent testing to contain sodium or saturated fat levels that are not substantially lower than products making no health claims. The halo effect of health branding can reduce label scrutiny at the point of purchase. Because consumers reasonably assume that a product marketed as a healthy choice has been held to a higher nutritional standard than an equivalent product with no health claims. The FSA recall record includes Sainsbury's products for contamination and mislabeling. A brand that asks consumers to trust its health positioning needs a labeling accuracy record that supports that trust. The recall history introduces an inconsistency between the ask and the evidence. At number 4, Tesco. Tesco holds approximately 27% of the UK grocery market, making it the single most significant influence on British eating habits by volume. That scale creates both an unusual level of consumer trust and an unusual degree of accountability for what that trust is used to deliver. The Advertising Standards Authority investigated Tesco's club card prices scheme following consumer complaints that promotional pricing was misleading. The concern was that products appeared to offer significant discounts through club card pricing, when the baseline price had been elevated prior to the promotion. Whether or not a specific product was deliberately manipulated in this way. The investigation reflects a documented pattern of promotional mechanics that were not operating in the straightforwardly beneficial way consumers understood them to be. The exclusively at Tesco own brand tier uses budget ingredient formulations including palm oil, modified starches, and elevated salt levels in products where brand positioning implies exclusivity and value. Exclusively at Tesco means those products are not available elsewhere. It does not mean they are better than what is available elsewhere. In some cases, the formulation is straightforwardly cheaper than comparable products at competing retailers. For the sheer number of people whose primary grocery relationship is with Tesco. The quality and transparency standards the company chooses to apply to its own brand range have a public health dimension that no other single retailer in Britain can match. At number 3, Lidl. Lidl has successfully repositioned discount grocery in Britain. Award-winning wines, well-regarded bakery products, and a middle aisle that has generated genuine enthusiasm have built a brand identity that comfortably coexists with a low-price positioning. The perception that discount does not mean low quality is genuine in some product categories. The concerns with Lidl sit in supply, chain traceability, and product recall history. Lidl's European supply chain has been involved in recalls across multiple countries for contamination issues. Their rapid stock rotation model, which is part of what keeps prices low, means products move through the supply chain at a pace that can compress the time available for quality verification at each stage. Traceability is the specific concern. When a product recall is issued, the ability to identify which batches are affected, where they were distributed, and how to notify consumers depends on the quality of supply chain documentation. Retailers with less granular traceability infrastructure take longer to identify the scope of a contamination event and longer to get accurate information to consumers. For most shoppers, this is a background risk that rarely materializes. For people with serious food allergies, or with medical conditions that make foodborne illness a more serious risk. The quality of a retailer's recall management and traceability infrastructure is a practical consideration in choosing where to shop. At number 2, Aldi. Aldi has achieved something genuinely impressive in British retail. They have made own-brand discount products competitive with named brands on taste. And blind taste tests have repeatedly produced results that challenge the assumption that price and quality are reliably correlated. That achievement is real and worth acknowledging. The documented concern with Aldi sits in their allergen labeling record. The FSA database includes multiple Aldi product recalls for undeclared allergens including milk, egg, mustard, and nuts. These are not all attributable to the same failure, which suggests a systemic quality control challenge rather than an isolated incident. Undeclared allergens in products that have passed through quality control and reached retail shelves indicate that the verification process for allergen-containing ingredients is not catching all. Failures before products reach consumers. Aldi's lean staffing model, which is a structural part of how they deliver low prices, means fewer employees available for the temperature monitoring, stock rotation, and chilled product management that maintain food safety standards in high-turnover refrigerated sections. This is not a criticism of individual Aldi employees. It is a structural consequence of the staffing ratio that the low-price model requires. For shoppers with serious food allergies, the allergen labeling record is a meaningful consideration. For everyone else, Aldi represents genuine value in most product categories, while carrying the supply chain and quality control characteristics of a business model built around cost minimization at every stage. And the format worth naming most directly is the small format convenience store, Tesco Express, the Jack's brand while it existed, and comparable small format discount convenience operations carrying major supermarket names. These stores trade on the trust consumers associate with the parent brand, while operating under significantly different product mix and freshness standards than the full-size stores that built those brands. The shelf space in a Tesco Express is primarily occupied by ambient processed products, chilled ready meals, and convenience items. Fresh fruit and vegetables are minimal. Whole grains and unprocessed proteins are largely absent. The product mix is not designed for nutritional balance. It is designed for the highest margin per square foot in a limited space. The public health dimension of this format is specific and serious. Millions of people in Britain, particularly older people in urban areas without access to a car, live in food environments where a Tesco Express or equivalent small format store is their primary and sometimes only accessible grocery option. These are not people choosing ultra-processed food. They are people whose food environment has made anything else genuinely difficult to access. The major supermarket brands that operate these convenience formats have the resources and the infrastructure to improve the product mix in their small format stores. The decision not to do so reflects a commercial calculation. The health cost of that calculation falls on the communities with the fewest alternatives. 2 retailers consistently perform better than the 11 discussed above on the measures that matter most. Waitrose has a documented policy of restricting or banning over 100 artificial additives, colors, and flavorings from their own brand range. This is not a marketing claim. It is a purchasing policy that operates at the supply chain level, meaning these ingredients are excluded before products reach the shelf rather than being managed through consumer-facing labeling. Independent food hygiene inspections across the Waitrose store estate consistently return high ratings. Their own brand product nutritional profiles, when compared with equivalent products at competing retailers, show lower additive loads and more transparent ingredient declarations. The free-from range is among the most extensive in British retail, developed for people who actually require allergen-free products rather than as a trend-adjacent marketing category. For people managing celiac disease, serious food allergies, or medical conditions that require careful dietary management. Waitrose's stricter ingredient policies reduce the gap between what the label says and what the product contains. Waitrose costs more than Tesco, Asda, or Aldi, That is a real barrier for many households and worth stating honestly. The question for each household is whether the difference in ingredient standards, hygiene compliance, and labeling accuracy is worth the price difference given their specific health circumstances. Marks & Spencer Food operates a vertically integrated supply chain from a tightly controlled network of approved suppliers. That structure provides a higher level of traceability than most UK supermarkets, which is a meaningful factor in both recall prevention and recall management when something goes wrong. M&S has committed to removing artificial colors and flavors from its entire food range, not just its premium tier. Their Eat Well range is developed with input from registered nutritionists, rather than being defined primarily by marketing criteria. Nutritional labeling is among the clearest in British retail, with portion-based figures that correspond to realistic serving sizes, rather than fractional servings that make products look better on paper. For people following specific medical dietary guidance, whether managing sodium intake, saturated fat, calorie targets, or nutrient thresholds, M&S labeling provides the accurate proportion information that makes it possible to actually follow that guidance using their products. The sourcing transparency means that when something goes wrong, the traceability infrastructure exists to identify and communicate the problem quickly. M&S is more expensive than most of the retailers on this list. The premium reflects genuine supply chain and ingredient standard differences rather than primarily brand positioning. Whether that premium is appropriate depends on individual circumstances. The practical takeaway from this review is straightforward. Not all supermarkets are equivalent on the measures that most affect the health of people with existing conditions, allergies, or specific dietary requirements. Hygiene compliance, allergen labeling accuracy, additive policies, and sodium levels in own brand products vary meaningfully between retailers. And those differences have real consequences for specific groups of shoppers. For most healthy adults shopping across a range of products and not relying heavily on own brand processed food, the differences between mid-range retailers are manageable. For people managing hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, kidney disease, serious food allergies, or other conditions where dietary specifics genuinely affect health outcomes, the choice of where to shop is a more meaningful decision than most public health communication acknowledges. Waitrose and M&S have the best documented records on the measures that matter most. They are more expensive. The evidence for why that expense reflects something real rather than just premium positioning is in their ingredient policies, their hygiene compliance records, and their labeling practices. Subscribe to TruthCart UK for more evidence-based retailer and product analysis. No affiliate arrangements, no sponsored conclusions, just the information that helps you make more informed choices about where your food actually comes from.